was the RANsquawk's e-morning briefing for Tuesday the 15th of September 2009. Just going through 8:30 now in London, so taking a quick recap around the markets and a review of the overnight press. Starting off with global news. Obviously Obama did speak yesterday. Just to recap some of the major points there, and some of the major focus after those Chinese relations yesterday. Obama said enforcing current trade agreements such as China tyres is not meant to be provocative or protective. Also, US trade officials says the US is confident its curbs on China and tyre imports are fully consistent with the World Trade Organization rules. Finally, the White House also said the tyre trade dispute is not expected to cause US and China friction on other issues such as North Korea. Again, worth keeping a close eye on those relations given the fact that the G20 is due to meet at the end of next week. In terms of Fed speak, a couple of people overnight to be aware of. Fed's Yellen said foreclosures show no sign of turning around. Yellen says US economy to remain vulnerable to shocks and sees slim odds for a strong return in consumer spending. In addition, Yellen said that the Fed needs to keep its foot on the policy acceleration for the time being and to tighten policy before US jobless rate falls back to 5%. Separately, Fed's Lacker says exit strategy hinges on how recovery evolves. Lacker said the state of economy influences view on MBS are out of abundance of caution. It seems to make sense to taper off the end of MBS buying. It says the Fed must decide if it wants to complete asset purchases, has not yet made up his mind, according to Fed's Lacker. Elsewhere, in terms of overnight, we did see a release of the Australian Central Bank minutes from the last meeting. Showed that the central bank felt the economy was substantially stronger than expected at its policy meeting this month, but decided there was enough uncertainty at home and abroad to argue against the hike for the time being. Elsewhere, Fed's Yellen did comment as well on the dollar. It's worth noting Yellen saying the Fed does not have a target for the US dollar and takes its movement into account. Also stating a significant dollar decline could fuel inflation, thus creating a new systemic risk. Elsewhere, in WTI crude futures, we are trading broadly flat at the moment to a minor negative, with the dollar index pretty much up at its session high as we speak, up around 0.2. WTI trading around 68.70 at last check. So the UK headlines, one of the major things came out overnight on the UK housing front. Some positive news. The RICS house price balance for August came out at quite an impressive plus 10.7%. Analysts were looking for a zero reading. The previous of minus 8.1 was also revised positively to just minus 5.7. House prices in England and Wales rose for the first time then in more than 2 years, according to that latest RICS data. Cable was off to an early start and is trading high around 20 pips still at the moment, and gilts did open down around 20 ticks or so, although it has pared back slightly on the back of that RICS number. Looking elsewhere then in the equity specific, the Nikkei did finish up marginally 0.2%, adding to the marginal higher close on Wall Street yesterday evening. In particular, a couple of pieces just to be aware of. For Citigroup, the US Treasury Department and the bank have begun discussing ways in how to sell the 34% stake the government acquired in the rescue of the bank, according to people familiar with the matter, so worth keeping on that story in the Wall Street Open this afternoon. Elsewhere in the FTSE, for Royal Sun Alliance, the company is considering large acquisitions, potentially valued at about £600 million that may need to be supported by a rights offering as an EFT. And for the ongoing story that is Cadbury's, the company is expected to have talks with Kraft Foods in the coming weeks, which could lead to another offer being received for the company. Elsewhere as well, for Deutsche Telekom, obviously we saw that speculation in the weekend's Telegraph that they may be mulling a bid for Sprint Nextel. Sprint did see some good performance yesterday. However, latest out of the Handelsblatt newspaper in Germany says that Deutsche Telekom plans no major US buy before year end, citing sources close to the supervisory board. So we'll see how Sprint reacts to that later on today. To take a look then just ahead in terms of the calendar, quite a busy day today. 9 o'clock we'll have Italian labour costs. 9:30 we'll have the latest in terms of the August CPI and RPI numbers from the UK. 10 o'clock will be the main Eurozone data. It will be from Germany, the ZEW survey for September. Analysts are looking for an improvement on the headline to 60 from previous 56.1. That'll take us through then into the 1:30s from the US when we'll get the release of the PPI numbers, the Advanced Retail Sales Report and Empire Manufacturing. And then later on we'll get IBD tips and business inventories, as well as API crude oil inventory levels due after market, allied to the ABC Consumer Confidence number. Speakers as well, a few of note at 9:45, be keeping an eye on the Bank of England members testifying to Treasury Select Committee in regards to the inflation report that we have already seen in the last few weeks. And elsewhere, Fed's Bernanke, he's due to speak on the one-year anniversary of the financial crisis and the collapse of Lehman this afternoon at 3 o'clock, followed by ECB's Stark and Treasury's Wolin. Elsewhere as well, coming in the next hour or so, keeping an eye in European fixed income, we'll see around €1 billion worth in terms of 5 and 10-year bond tap out of Ireland, and then we'll have reverse auctions in both the Bank of England and the Fed later on this afternoon.